Good morning to our viewers here in the United States and around the world. It is Monday, June 14th. President Biden's new strategy aimed at restoring U.S. leadership in the world and its credibility with traditional allies is continuing this morning in Brussels. Meetings underway right now with NATO partners. Before the summit events even began, the president told the NATO Secretary General a strong alliance is essential to addressing new threats from China and Russia.
We have new challenges, and we have Russia that is not acting in a way that is consistent with what we had hoped, and as well as China. But I want to make it clear, NATO is critically important for U.S. interest in and of itself. If there weren't one, we'd have to invent one.
Now, the NATO summit is a bit of a prelude to President Biden's high-stakes face-to-face meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday in Geneva, Switzerland. And if nothing else, the two leaders agree on one thing, that the relations between the two countries are at a low point.
One of the issues President Biden will address is freedom for Americans imprisoned in Russia. That includes Trevor Reed, who has been held there since 2019. A Russian court sentenced Reed to 9 years in prison for endangering life and health of Russian police officers in an altercation. Reed, a Marine veteran, denies the charges, and U.S. Ambassador to Russia John Sullivan called the trial theater of the absurd. And now we're hearing from Trevor Reed in his own voice, at least in his own words, in a letter he sent to his family from the hospital while sick with COVID. The letter is dated June 7th. He was forced to write in Russian by prison authorities, even though he doesn't speak it fluently. It says in part, quote, "I've got a little pain in my lungs. Also, I suffer from cough from time to time. I've lost a few kilograms in weight." He also asks, quote, "Does the embassy and the State Department in Washington know about me?" Joining us now, Paula and Joey Reed, Trevor's parents. Thank you both so much for being with us. It is nice to see you again. I want to talk to you about this letter, which is rather heartbreaking in just a moment. But first, Russian leader Vladimir Putin was asked directly about your son in a TV news interview, and I want to play you, and I have to warn you, you're not going to like what he has to say here. It's not particularly gentle. Listen to what he says.
Your guy, the Marine, he's just a drunk and a troublemaker. As they say here, he got himself faced on vodka and started a fight. Among other things, he hit a cop.
And for that, he's sentenced to 9 years in a Russian prison. What's it like to hear that from the Russian leader?
Well, obviously, it's very offensive to us, and it's not true, so it's difficult to hear.
You know, we've never said anything negative about President Putin. That's a government issue and a political issue, but we find it strange that he's made these false statements against our son. First of all, if that were true, why didn't he prove it? Why didn't his kangaroo court prove it? Anyone who was there, instantly, news media, whoever attended, said this is a joke. This is the police keep changing their stories. It's not true. So yeah, it's offensive, and to me, it seems like a world leader, somebody who's supposed to be one of the biggest world leaders to say something like that. It's beneath the position. So.
And he's saying it as your son is clearly suffering. That letter that you have now seen, written in Russian from prison, where he talks about suffering from COVID, having problems in his lungs. What are your concerns, Paula, this morning?
Well, obviously, we're very concerned all along since the beginning when he was telling us that he was sick and they refused to give him a test. And then it took, I guess about 10 days to get him a test. Finally, they gave him a test and they found out when he was positive, they sent him to isolation, and we haven't been able to hear from him. It's my understanding, and we had questioned to see if he was getting any medication or any type of care, but I think that just by isolation is what they considered the care there. So we're very worried about him.
And, it's very concerning that the embassy has contacted everyone daily, multiple times, the foreign ministry, the prisons, and they keep giving him different excuses. They're getting the runaround. And other than the time that they sent him to, a mental facility at one of the worst prisons in the world, and we lost track of him for 9 days, again, we're thinking, well, if he's okay, why don't you just tell someone? And Trevor signed a power of attorney giving the jail a permission to speak about his medical situation to both his attorneys and the embassy, and no one's been able to contact him.
You talked about the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. What's the nature of your contact with them now, or the U.S. State Department? How often are you in contact?
We talk with the U.S. State Department weekly, and with the embassy, we email with them daily and sometimes multiple times during the day. And we know that they have gotten cut down to a skeleton crew, but they are working very hard on Trevor's behalf to, let us have communications, but they've just been denied at every step of the way.
When I was in Russia for 14 months, I got to know the main officials that deal with this situation, and the last year they've been extremely helpful. And Paula, when her and my daughter came for the beginning of Trevor's trial, they also actually got to meet Charge d'Affaires Gorman, who's in charge right now, along with the American Citizen Services reps. And so they've been extremely helpful, and now we engage with them, more than once daily. So.
I had a chance to speak to both of you in February, and you expressed to me that you were appreciative of a bit of a change in tone and tenor from this administration to the last. Their willingness to talk to you, also their willingness to stand up to Vladimir Putin. I'm wondering what your hopes are for this summit between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin on Wednesday, and what you've been told that the U.S. or President Biden will try to do in regards to your son.
Well, we've been told that President Biden is definitely going to bring up Trevor's case and Paul Whelan's case with President Putin. And our hope, obviously, is that they can come to some agreement that will let our son come home. I guess Putin is open to a prisoner exchange. And I know some people say we shouldn't do a prisoner exchange because Paul and Trevor are innocent of the charges against them, and the people that we would be trading are guilty criminals. But I really don't care how my son gets home. I just want him to get home. So
we think of Russian prisoners that were guilty and pled guilty that have been in American prisons for years. It's like, okay, just let them go. Then we don't have to pay to keep them and house them. And they've served, plenty of time already. And, not major crimes, just, make the trade. And again, we're very happy to hear Putin say that he's open to a trade. And we hope that will happen immediately.
There's been a lot of posturing between President Putin and President Biden leading up to this summit. I wonder how concerned you become when you hear this tough talk.
In the modern world, both locally and nationally and internationally, that's become the norm. There's a lot of that rhetoric that goes out, and that rhetoric is, for their own constituency. And we hope that's all it is. It's posturing, and that when they sit down with all of their people, that they can actually, communicate. And if there's anything in this summit that can be accomplished easily, it's the freeing of our son and Paul Whelan.
Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo did an interview where he talked about, or he defended, I should say, U.S. policy toward Russia during the Trump administration. I want you to listen to what he said.
There was no administration that was tougher on Russia. We worked diligently to support Ukraine with defensive weapon systems. We built out the United States military. We need to move forward, and we need to continue to defend the United States against the threats that Vladimir Putin may pose, whether it's cyber or kinetic or any of the other information efforts that Vladimir Putin will try to foist upon America if President Biden is weak.
So, Joey, do you agree with that when he says no one's been tougher on Russia than the Trump administration? Do you really feel like that was the case?
Well, first of all the things he said, those are probably true, the things that we did do, but the things that administration didn't do, other than Pompeo occasionally, was speak publicly against the things that the Russian government has done. And all I can say is when it came to prisoners, that administration would only count the prisoners that they brought home. And I believe President Trump said he had a 100% success rate in freeing prisoners. I guess he wasn't talking about the other 80-something Americans that were wrongfully held in countries around the world. And as far as our son goes, Pompeo and Trump never said his name. The current administration, we had a virtual meeting with Secretary Blinken 6 days after confirmation, and they've been speaking out for him at the White House, press corps, and also at the State Department. And we're extremely happy that they're publicly saying this is wrong and demanding his release. And now they're having discussions which we hope will lead to some resolution to the issue.
And Paula, just the letter that Joey did manage, that Trevor did manage to get out. of prison. Talk to me more about the letter, what you see in it, and what your takeaway is.
And, you know,
I feel like, as his mom, I know him pretty well, and I feel like he's feeling a little lost right now. He's not sure if he's concerned that we don't know that he's there, and that the government's not working to try to, you know, get some communication with him. So I feel like he thinks that he's a little abandoned, not by the government, but just because he's being isolated in Russia, and he's feeling a little lost. So it's very concerning. Also, his health is concerning. So, you know, that's not the kind of letter that any mom wants to get from her son.
Paula Joy Reid, thank you so much again for coming on, sharing your thoughts with us this morning. We hope you get some kind of resolution in the next few days. Thank you, and keep us posted.
Thank you, Mr.
John.
Berman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Brianna.
Yeah, let's talk more about this now with Chief Yahoo News, Michael Isikoff. And he's also the host of a very good podcast, Conspiracy Land, which has a new season out today. And certainly you have your hands very full with that. But you just listened to Trevor Reed's parents.
Yeah.
And this is going to come up when Biden and Putin meet in Geneva on Wednesday. They say they're hoping that there's some kind of agreement for him to come home for a prisoner exchange. What do you think this discussion is going to be like? And do you think that's a possibility?
Well, apparently Putin did throw out the idea that he's open to a trade, but, that's after calling, their son a drunk who was, picked up for unruly behavior. But 9 years in prison is so off the charts, and a reminder that this is an authoritarian regime in which its court system is completely subjected to the political whims of the Kremlin. So, we will see. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a deal in the making here. But look, this summit is going to be compared to the infamous summit in Helsinki, where Trump and Putin stood there, and Trump backed up Putin.
Over his own intelligence community.
Clearly, the Biden people are making a break from that. There's not going to be a joint press conference. Biden will give his own account of the meeting afterwards, and I think that sends an important signal right there.
Yeah, he's not going to stand side by side with him in a joint presser. It sends a very, very loud signal. I do want to turn now. I've really wanted to see what your perspective is on Israel right now. Just amazing what we are watching, the transition of power happening there. The long-running Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu officially out after more than a decade in power. And yesterday, Naftali Bennett was sworn in as his replacement. Let's listen to what Netanyahu had to say during his final remarks.
We'll be back soon. We'll be back.
I mean, that is quite the unruly moment there. What are you seeing? What are you making of this moment in Israel?
Look, Israeli politics is unusually unruly as a norm. But that said, the real question here is, what, if anything, does this new government going to do in terms of a change in policy with Palestinian Arabs, with the West Bank, with Gaza? It's not at all clear there's going to be the kind of dramatic break from Netanyahu that a lot of people would be hoping for. Bennett, the new prime minister, is a hardcore pro-settler guy. We haven't heard too much about, his willingness to tack from that. So, I think a lot of people will be celebrating the end of Netanyahu. He's been there for so long, but, whether this is going to lead to any real progress in peace talks remains to be seen.
I know you're paying a lot of attention to what's happening at the Department of Justice.
Yes.
And what we've learned about the former Department of Justice under President Trump. There were secret subpoenas that targeted his perceived enemies, ones that he was very public about who his enemies were.
Right. How
do you think it's possible that his attorneys general didn't know about this?
Look, these kind of subpoenas, certainly to members of Congress and to members of the press, require high-level political
and their
approval.
Family members, by the way.
Right, and their family members. So you cannot, Barr, Sessions, Rosenstein have all said they were not aware of the ones to members of Congress. Somebody approved them. They could be misremembering or something else. Or it is worth remembering that this is not unprecedented. unprecedented that Justice Departments doing leak investigations have done this kind of thing before. Members of Congress members of the Senate Intelligence Committee were investigated at the request of Vice President Cheney during the Bush years. We know about the Obama administration aggressively pursuing leak investigations and secretly getting the phone records of reporters. So I suspect at the end of the day, this is going to get awkward for the Garland Justice Department because as much as they want to make a break from Trump, there were undoubtedly career prosecutors who filed these motions in court, who defended them before judges, and, they were either they were ordered to do something they thought was unethical or improper, or they were following what they thought to be department rules, existing department rules. And that's going to make it very difficult for Merrick Garland because he's not going to want to, he's an institutionalist. He's not going to want to dump on people who are career prosecutors who have been there for many years and doing what they thought was the right thing.
Yeah, and he's trying to sort of restore the Department of Justice.
Yes.
We'll see how he manages the tension between these two things. Michael, it's great to see you. Thank you so much. And again, you are the host of the Conspiracy Land podcast, which you should definitely check out if you haven't already. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next, we have much more on this. We're going to speak with a former member of Congress who was in power at the time of these secret subpoenas.
And a requirement for COVID vaccinations at New York's largest hospital. Will they make any exceptions? And Republican Senator Ron Johnson says stupid stuff, which may be the least newsworthy headline of all time. Next.
Former White House counsel Don McGahn says that Apple notified him and his wife that the Justice Department sought their records in 2018 while he was still the top lawyer representing the president. This is high-level members of the Trump Justice Department say they were unaware of a probe into Democratic members of the House. Let's talk about this now with former Congresswoman Katie Hill. Thank you so much for joining us in studio today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I want to ask you first what we heard from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi yesterday about this on CNN's State of the Union.
How could it be that there could be an investigation of other members in the other branch of government and the press and the rest too? Mm-hmm. And the attorneys general did not know. So who are these people, and are they still in the Justice Department? And again, this is just out of the question, no matter who's president, whatever party, this cannot be the way it goes.
She doesn't believe that the attorneys general under Trump could not have known about secret subpoenas, this wide-reaching, members of Congress, reporters, even the president's own White House counsel. What do you think?
I think there's no way that they couldn't have known. It seems to me that you're not going to find lower level staff or people within the Department of Justice who are going to execute on something like this without sign off from the highest people in the department. So to me, that's just a no-brainer, and it's clear that they're trying to protect themselves by denying that. So I think we're going to have to get to the bottom of this, and I hope that the House, under the Speaker's leadership, is able to get people to testify and get to the bottom of the matter.
So what do you think should happen, and how do you think Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, who, as Michael Isikoff pointed out, he's an institutionalist, he's doing stuff that a lot of Democrats are saying, wait, really? What should he do to balance this?
Look, I can't speak to department protocols or anything. My hope is that at the very least, he's doing the internal investigation to determine what's going on, who's still at the department that's responsible for this, and how it happened through the chain of command. At the same time, I think that the investigative powers of Congress are going to be tested, and hopefully some of the people who have been subpoenaed in the past and have resisted that will be, inclined to show up this time.
Has Congress been neutered in terms of being able to subpoena people? It seems like they should be able to get Bill Barr to come and testify, Jeff Sessions, Rod Rosenstein.
Well, I certainly think that the precedent that was set under President Trump was that you don't have to show up to a congressional subpoena, especially if it's under the other party. And if that's the case, then you kind of wait it out, right? You just wait it out until people aren't interested anymore. And I hope that that's not something that's going to be able to continue under this new administration. But it's ultimately going to be put to the test, and we have no other option but to try and to try to bring back some of the norms that predated the Trump administration.
I want to ask you about Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, who at one point you had a across the aisle friendship with, which seems sort of like, I don't want to say an odd friendship, but it's one that, because it was kind of odd, got some attention. I know that you've certainly spoken out against him since he's come under federal investigation for crimes that involve alleged sexual contact with a minor and obstruction of justice. Certainly you have Democrats who are calling for him to be removed from the House Judiciary Committee. He's denied these allegations. That's important to note here. What are your thoughts on whether he should be removed from the committee?
Oh, I think he absolutely should be removed from the committee. You can't be overseeing a committee that has jurisdiction over an investigation that you're part of, that you're involved in, actively involved in. I think he should be removed from any of the committees right now while the investigation's pending, and at a minimum, judiciary.
Are you gobsmacked by what you've heard?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think, it's horrifying. It's depressing. It's, it shows you the double standard for what's expected of men and women. And I think that, I'm not optimistic that he's ever going to resign or be held accountable because of gerrymandering and because of the way that things have played out in the past.
So you were friends with him. I wonder how you make sense of this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had to reconcile that myself. It's just disgusting. It makes you look at your own friendship and your own interactions in a different light. So
You have been leading an effort since you left Congress to deal with the issue of revenge porn and on the Violence Against Women Act, and really these issues altogether about what women endure and should not endure. What is the status of that fight? It seems like we haven't really heard a whole lot about this progressing.
Yeah, so the Violence Against Women Act passed the House in March. And since then, there has been pretty much no progress. And I get it. The Senate's busy. They've got a lot of must-pass things. There's this whole standoff over the filibuster. There's the desire to, now work in whatever we can within, reconciliation. But right now, women are dying every single day. Every 20 seconds, somebody is, a woman in particular, is abused by a significant other. And women are shot. 56 women a month are shot and killed by their significant other or a former significant other. And there's all kinds of things that are done in this Violence Against Women Act reauthorization that would address some of those issues. It's a bipartisan bill. It's not something that should be that should be held back because of the filibuster. We should be able to get those 10 votes. So the organization that I founded, Her Time, we're really mobilizing around an effort to target 10 to 15 states of Republican senators that we think can be brought over to bring that public pressure and say that this is not something in which we should be engaged in partisanship bickering. This is about saving lives, and it's that urgent. And within that, we have a provision that we were able to get into the House version called the SHIELD Act, which makes cyber exploitation, intimate image abuse, also known as revenge porn, a federal crime. And that's the first time it would ever be a federal crime. It is a big deal. It sends an important message to anyone who's considering, sending these pictures or sharing these pictures of somebody else, that this is absolutely wrong. It's not just wrong for you as an individual, but it's wrong for us as a society, and it has to not be normalized anymore. So I'm really hopeful that we're going to be able to make some progress on this over the summer, and that the Senate ultimately brings it up for a vote very soon.
Yeah, here in the post-Me Too era, it's hard to imagine there just not being this appetite to push some of these measures forward. Before I let you go, will you run again?
Listen, I haven't written anything off. The last 2 years year and a half have been really, tragic and important for my family and for me in terms of figuring out what the next steps are. And right now, I need to figure out my role in making sure that this gets passed, helping women run for and get elected to office. And the work that we're doing with Her Time is supporting candidates, supporting incumbents. Ultimately, 2022, we have to hold the House. Everyone needs to remember that all of this work we've done before, all of the frustrations around, we're not getting as much done as we want to, the Senate is holding us up because of the filibuster.
But
literally none of that will matter.
Doesn't that make you want to get back in the arena?
Sometimes, but sometimes I wonder, maybe my role is more important on the outside. So I'm still definitely on that kind of, figuring it out piece. And at the same time, we've got redistricting happening, and there's 6 months probably to go before we really know what these districts are going to look like and what districts are going to be competitive, Mine, the one that I ran in before, might not even be a competitive district. So my attention, might need to be elsewhere to do what I can to protect the majority. So I got time to decide, and a lot of legal battles and legal debt to go in the meantime.
All right. Well, we will keep asking. Congresswoman, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
Not a no, though, notably there. In the meantime, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson says stuff that isn't true about the Capitol insurrection. That could be a recurring segment on the show, but it would be an offensive one. Offensive to the Capitol police officers, offensive to their families, offensive to the members of Congress and staff members, offensive to the people beaten in the riot or who died in the days after. So despite the facts, despite the reams of visual evidence, despite the truth about what happened, this is what he says.
We've seen plenty of video of people in the Capitol, and they weren't rioting. It doesn't look like an armed insurrection when you have people that breach the Capitol, and I don't condone it, but they're staying within the rope lines in the rotunda. That's not what an armed insurrection would look like.
Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. John Avlon back with us.
Look, this, just because we've heard this before doesn't mean it shouldn't still outrage you, because this is a U.S. senator who is trying to normalize an attack on our democracy. You can't tell the difference between tourism and terrorism.
You can tell the difference.
Oh, well, no, but he's clearly playing to the base, or this echo chamber ecosystem that he's in has twisted his mind to deny what he saw. What do they need to see? Do they actually need to hang Mike Pence? Do they need to come for him personally? Because the fact is that this is what we're seeing on the far right now. It's actually going beyond the far right. And this is exactly why, by the way, there needs to be a commission. There needs to be a House subcommittee. Senate rejected a bipartisan commission, which is an insult. There needs to be a House committee that Nancy Pelosi needs to address, because these sorts of denialism needs to be pierced by facts, more of them.
He's either demented, lying, or both.
Or all three, yes.
Yeah, all of the above.
Yes.
All right, John, thank you very much. One of the biggest hospital groups in the nation now requiring staffers to get vaccinated against coronavirus. The chief executive of the New York Presbyterian Hospital System will join us next.
And why Senator Joe Manchin is about to get an earful from some voters who are close to home today.
New York Presbyterian, one of the nation's largest and most respected hospitals, has a message for its employees. Get vaccinated or you could lose your job. Joining us now is Dr. Steve Corwin. He's the president and CEO of New York Presbyterian. Doc, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Why did you make this decision? Why are you requiring vaccinations for your employees?
Look, our first priority, our only priority really, is to make sure that patients who come to us are safe. We're only at about a 70% vaccination rate. That's not sufficient in my mind. 30% of our staff are still not vaccinated. That's after 6 months of education trying to overcome vaccine hesitancy. We've just got to make sure that our employees are vaccinated for the protection of staff and for the protection of our patients.
You're a hospital system. I mean, how do you explain how 30% of the people who work in medicine aren't yet vaccinated?
I wish I could give you an answer for it. I know in certain of our groups there's vaccine hesitancy, but we've really worked very hard to overcome that. Also in our communities. And you see we're struggling in many states to get to even a 50% vaccination level. Look, we require vaccination for measles, for rubella, for chickenpox, for flu. 600,000 deaths in America. I think we have to get vaccinated.
What's going to happen to these employees if they don't get vaccinated?
It's going to be a condition of their employment. Religious exemptions, of course. Medical exemptions, of course. I don't want to lose a single employee. But I can't look patients in the eye and say that 30% of my employees are not vaccinated.
Will they get a last warning? Will they say, okay?
Yes. We'll give them a last warning. We're giving them till September 1st to get vaccinated, August 1st to give us an exemption list. And then we'll give them a final warning after September 1st.
A federal judge ruled in this Houston case, similar issue where the hospital system tried to require it.
Yes.
People objected. The federal judge ruled for the hospital. Does that give you encouragement?
I know Mark Boom at Houston Methodist. He's a terrific guy. I know Kevin Mahoney at Penn Med. I know Dennis Murphy at Indiana University Health. I think they're taking the right stance. But yes, it gives me encouragement that we've made the right decision.
Let me ask you about what's happening in the United Kingdom, because it's not unrelated to the United States, and it's certainly not unrelated to your hospital. The United Kingdom today is going to announce a delay in its full reopening. They wanted to be fully reopened within the week. That's not going to happen. They're pushing it back a month because of the Delta variant that was first seen in India. They're seeing a rise in cases. They're seeing a rise in hospitalizations, and their vaccination rates very similar to here in the United States. So how much concern does that give you?
A lot of concern. The more virus you have circulating around the world, the more likely there is to be a mutation. The more likely that mutation is going to self-select to be more infectious or more deadly. That's why, as we open up, as the economy comes back, as we feel better about doing things like going to ball games, we all need to get vaccinated.
Dr. Steve Irwin, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, up next, new backlash today to Senator Joe Manchin's decision to block a key voting rights bill.
In the last months in office for New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, we will roll the tape on some moments that are strange, even by New York standards.
And it's about pizza topping.
Happening today in Charleston, West Virginia, demonstrators taking the fight over a sweeping federal voting rights bill named the For the Act People directly to the doorstep of the state's Democratic Senator Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin has come out against the proposal, citing its lack of Republican support and his opposition to changing Senate filibuster rules to push it through with a simple majority. Today's Moral March on Manchin, as it's called, is organized by the Poor People's Campaign, a faith-led grassroots organization that works to highlight the issues of poverty and economic inequality in the U.S. Joining us now, the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, Bishop William Barber II. Bishop, thanks so much for being with us today. What's your goal going to West Virginia today? What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, people from West Virginia said, come here. We need to talk to Manchin and deal with him directly in his state. So we have minors, white people from the mountains, poor people, black people, from the hood, clergy, veterans, young people. They're going to speak. They want the nation to hear. They are tired of Manchin acting as though he's speaking for West Virginia. They're going to attack their demands on his office. They're going to speak on June 21st at a virtual mass Poor People's Assembly low-wage worker moral march on Washington. And then on the 23rd, they're coming by bus to march on Manchin and McConnell and the Russell Building and demand a meeting with clergy, voting rights lawyers, and themselves. You see, they're going to show real West Virginia. They're tired of being blamed. And he's saying that he's supporting them when 70% plus of West Virginians want the For the People Act. They want restoration of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. In fact, they want living wages. You know, there's 700,000 poor and low wealth people in West Virginia, over 47% of the people. There are 350,000 people in West Virginia who make less than $15 an hour. They need living wages. They need health insurance. There are 133,000 people in West Virginia without health insurance. They need infrastructure. 49.6% of the census tracts in West Virginia can't hardly afford water. So they're tired of Manchin's a filibuster and not supporting them, talking about bipartisanism rather than talking about the needs of West Virginia. So you're going to see the real West Virginia stand up right here in the state, and then they're coming to D.C.
Realistically, though, what's going to change Joe Manchin's mind?
Well, we don't know yet. He's never faced street heat from his own people. He's just been talking to the media and claiming he's representing West Virginia. Well, now West Virginia is going to speak. You know, all of the things we're fighting for, voting rights, wages, let's remember, in history, those things were never just given. They had to be fought for.
But
and
Bishop,
so that's what
Bishop, can I say, but, you know, Trump won West Virginia by like 40%, right? I mean, doesn't Manchin